Emma sat quietly in her favorite corner of the living room, the soft glow of the evening sun filtering through the curtains. Her thoughts wandered, drifting to things she had never really said aloud. At 28, married for 4 years to Jake, life had settled into a rhythm that was comfortable but predictable. Their small house in suburban Ohio was filled with the routines of daily life work. Meals, occasional outings, but beneath the calm surface, Emma felt a quiet restlessness growing inside her. She wasn't unhappy exactly, but she was restless, curious about things she had never explored. She found herself thinking about older women sometimes. Not in a passing way, but as if there was something in their presence that she was drawn to, something she wanted to understand. The way they moved with quiet confidence, the way they carried stories in their eyes. Emma wondered what it would be like to feel that kind of wisdom, that kind of connection with life. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about longing, about a feeling that she had more to learn. More to feel. Jake was a good husband, steady, kind, and reliable, but lately, there was a distance between them that neither of them talked about. Conversations became shorter, smiles a little less frequent. Emma wondered if he felt it too, or if she was imagining things. She wanted to say something, but the words got stuck. Instead, she kept her feelings locked away, hoping they would pass. One quiet evening, as they sat together in their living room, Jake broke the silence. His voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. "Emma, have you ever wondered about the different kinds of love people share? Not just the kind we know, the young, simple kind, but the deeper kind that comes with experience." Emma looked at him, surprised by the question. It was unlike Jake to speak so openly about feelings and questions. "What do you mean?" she asked, her curiosity growing. Jake paused, searching for the right words. "I mean that there are things we haven't talked about. Things we might explore together, new parts of ourselves, new feelings. I think it could bring us closer." Emma's heart began to race, unsure if she should be excited or afraid. The idea was both strange and inviting. She nodded slowly, letting the thoughts settle in. The silence between them felt different now, not heavy or awkward, but full of possibility. That night, Emma lay awake, thinking about Jake's words. She realized she had never really allowed herself to think about what she wanted beyond the life they had built. What if there was more to love? What if they could find it together? The questions filled her mind, and though she didn't have answers, she felt a new hope stirring inside her. The days that followed were filled with small moments of quiet reflection. Emma noticed how the world looked a little different, how her heart was opening to new possibilities. Jake was patient and gentle, not pushing her, but inviting her to explore at her own pace. She wondered where this journey would lead. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to find out. The path was uncertain, but Emma was no longer afraid to walk it. A week passed since Jake had first opened the door to a conversation Emma never expected. The silence between them had changed. It wasn't empty anymore, it was waiting. Every time Jake looked at her, it was like he was asking something without saying the words out loud. Emma kept thinking about it. Not just what he said, but how he said it. Calm, honest, almost like he had been thinking about it for much longer than she had realized. One afternoon, they were sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee. Emma could feel that Jake was building up to something. He wasn't nervous, just careful. He set down his cup and met her eyes. "There's something I want to tell you," he said. "It's not bad, just different." Emma nodded, unsure of what was coming. "I've been talking to someone," he said. "Someone I knew before we got married. Her name is Rachel. She's older, mid-40s. We were just friends back then. Nothing ever happened. But we've stayed in touch here and there. Lately, we've had a few conversations. Honest ones." Emma didn't speak, but she listened closely. Jake continued. "She's kind, smart. She sees the world differently. And when we talked recently, I told her about us. About how we've been feeling. About how I think there's more out there, not in a way that replaces what we have, but in a way that helps us grow." Emma's heartbeat was louder than the quiet room. "I'm not asking you to do anything you don't want to do," he added quickly. "But I want you to meet her. Just meet her. Talk to her. She's not a stranger to me, and I think you might like her too." Emma stared at him. "Why would you want that?" Jake leaned forward. "Because I think we've both been wondering about something. About what it means to love deeper, to understand different parts of ourselves. This isn't about cheating or stepping out of what we have. It's about learning, feeling, being honest." Kama didn't know what to say. The idea sounded strange, maybe even wrong at first. But deep down, she knew this wasn't a fantasy or a trap. Jake wasn't trying to escape their life. He was inviting her into something they'd never explored, something he believed they could understand together. That night, Emma sat on the porch alone, watching the sky turn dark. She thought about the years they had spent together. The early days were filled with laughter, long talks, and simple joy. But things had changed, and she knew it wasn't anyone's fault. They had grown quieter, more distant. And maybe that was why this conversation had even started, because they both felt the silence growing louder. She thought about Rachel. What kind of woman was she? What would they talk about? What if she did feel something? Would that mean she didn't love Jake anymore? Or could love stretch wider than she thought? The next morning, Emma told Jake she was willing to meet her. Jake didn't smile in victory. He simply nodded, calm and respectful. "Thank you," he said. "There's no pressure. Just be yourself." So the meeting was set for the weekend. A simple coffee shop downtown, neutral and quiet. Emma spent most of the day before feeling nervous, unsure what to expect. She chose a soft, simple outfit. Nothing dramatic. She didn't want to impress anyone. She just wanted to be real. When she walked into the coffee shop, Jake was already there, sitting with a woman who stood up as Emma approached. Rachel was graceful. Not flashy, not overly made up. Her eyes were warm, her smile genuine. "Emma," she said softly, "it's so good to finally meet you." They sat down and the conversation started slow, but not awkward. Rachel didn't speak like someone trying to win something. She was calm, thoughtful. She asked Emma about her life, her interests, how she and Jake met. Emma found herself relaxing. Slowly, carefully. Rachel didn't push anything. She talked about her own life, past relationships, her career, the lessons she had learned through the years. She wasn't trying to impress Emma. She was just sharing. As they talked, Emma noticed something she didn't expect. Comfort. She didn't feel threatened or judged. She felt seen, understood. Rachel wasn't trying to replace anything. She was simply there, open and honest. At one point, Rachel said something that stayed with Emma long after they left. "Love changes shape over time. What matters is how we stay honest with ourselves and how we allow space for others to grow." When the meeting ended, Emma thanked Rachel. Not out of politeness, but sincerely. Later that evening, as she and Jake sat quietly at home, he turned to her. "You okay?" Emma nodded. "I am. I don't know what this means yet, but I'm glad I went." Jake took her hand, no pressure in his touch. Just presence. "I want us to keep talking," he said. "No matter what." And for the first time in a long while, Emma didn't feel unsure or lost. She felt something new, like a door had opened inside her. Not toward chaos, but toward clarity. It was the beginning of something she didn't fully understand. But she was willing to keep walking forward. Not because she was unhappy, but because she was ready to feel more, learn more, and maybe become more herself than she had ever been. Emma stood in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection. It had been a few days since she met Rachel, and she couldn't stop thinking about it. The conversation, Rachel's calm voice. The way she listened without judging it all stayed with her like a quiet song playing in the background of her mind. She didn't know what she had expected going into that meeting, but she definitely hadn't expected to feel connected. Rachel wasn't just older in years. She felt older in spirit, like she had lived through emotions that Emma hadn't yet understood. She didn't try to seem wise or mysterious, but her presence made Emma feel safe, seen, and that, more than anything, had left a mark. Jake hadn't brought it up since the meeting. He was giving Emma space, letting her lead the pace. And that, too, made her think. There was something brave about what Jake had. done something vulnerable and trusting. This wasn't about thrill or excitement. It was about exploring something deeper than what either of them had known before. On a quiet Saturday morning, Emma broke the silence. "Jake," she said, pouring coffee into her mug, "I've been thinking. I don't know exactly what this all means yet, but I think I'd like to see her again." Jake looked up from the newspaper, his eyes steady. "You don't have to if you're unsure." "I know," Emma replied, "but I'm not scared anymore. I'm just curious." Jake nodded. "I'll let her know." Second meeting was different, more relaxed. Rachel invited Emma to her place for lunch. It was a simple home filled with plants, sunlight, and shelves of old books. Everything about it felt lived in and peaceful. They sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea before lunch. Rachel smiled gently. "I was hoping you'd come," she said. "Not for anything dramatic, just to continue the conversation." Emma nodded, still unsure of what she wanted to say. "You made me think about things differently," she finally said. "Not just about Jake, but about myself." Rachel leaned back. "That's good. We often forget we're allowed to rediscover ourselves, even in the middle of a settled life." As they ate, they talked more deeply. Rachel shared stories from her past, her first marriage, her regrets, her moments of strength. Emma listened, not as a guest, but as a student of life. There was so much Rachel had lived through, yet none of it made her bitter. She was open, full of grace, full of patience. At one point, Rachel asked, "Do you love Jake?" Emma didn't even hesitate. "Yes, I do. And do you feel like he still sees you?" Emma took a breath. "I think he's trying, and I think I'm just now learning how much I've changed without realizing it." Rachel smiled. "Sometimes love isn't about holding on tightly. It's about letting each other grow even if that growth looks unfamiliar." After lunch, they sat on the porch. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, and Emma felt herself relax in a way she hadn't in months. There was no pressure, no rush. Just understanding Rachel didn't try to lead the conversation anywhere uncomfortable. She didn't flirt or make hints. She simply existed in a space that felt kind, honest, and open. Emma began to understand that this was less about romance or desire, and more about awakening a part of herself that had been quiet for too long. When Emma got home that evening, Jake was in the kitchen making dinner. He looked up as she entered. "How was it?" Emma smiled softly. "It was. Good. She's easy to be around." Jake nodded, handing her a plate. They sat down and ate in silence for a while before Emma spoke again. "She asked me if I still loved you." Jake didn't flinch. "And what did you say?" "That I do." Jake looked at her with soft eyes. "I love you too, Emma. I don't want to lose that. I just want us to be honest even when it's complicated." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "I think I'm learning that love can be both strong and open, that it doesn't have to be one or the other." That night, they lay in bed without words. There was no need. The silence wasn't distant anymore. It was peaceful. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Rachel saw each other again: short walks, coffee meets, shared stories. Each meeting peeled back a layer inside Emma. She wasn't falling in love with Rachel in the way people might expect. It wasn't about replacing Jake or starting something new. It was about learning from someone who had traveled paths she hadn't yet walked. Jake remained supportive, even though Emma knew it wasn't easy. He was giving her space, trusting her, and in return, Emma found herself loving him even more. One evening, the three of them met again. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't tense. It was strange, yes, but also strangely natural. They talked, laughed, and for a few hours it felt like all the walls had come down. Not in a dramatic way, but in a soft human way. Three people, different but open, choosing honesty over fear. When the evening ended, Rachel hugged Emma gently. "Whatever happens next," she whispered, "you've already grown. That matters." And Emma knew she was right. This journey wasn't about breaking vows or escaping reality. It was about expanding her understanding of love, trust, and emotional truth. She wasn't chasing a fantasy. She was finally facing herself. As she and Jake walked to the car, she felt lighter. Not because everything made perfect sense now, but because, for the first time in a long time, she was moving forward without pretending. And that, she realized, was the beginning of something deeply real. Emma stood by the window, staring out at the trees swaying in the soft autumn breeze. The world outside was changing, leaves turning gold, air growing cooler, and somehow it matched everything happening inside her. The last few weeks had shifted her in quiet but powerful ways. Meeting Rachel hadn't caused chaos. It had brought clarity. What started as a confusing conversation had become a journey of emotional honesty between her, Jake, and a version of herself she was only now starting to meet. Jake came up behind her and placed a hand gently on her back. "You've been quiet," he said softly. "I've just been thinking," she replied. "About everything." They stood in silence for a moment. It wasn't uncomfortable anymore. They had grown used to giving each other space to reflect, to feel, to come back when the time felt right. Jake took a breath. "I've been thinking too, about how far we've come and how different this could have gone if we hadn't chosen to be honest." Emma turned toward him. "It's still strange. I never imagined we'd walk into something like this and come out stronger." Jake smiled, a little tired but full of sincerity. "Neither did I. But I think the way we've handled it says something about us." Emma nodded. "I think it says we're still choosing each other." That night, Emma went to see Rachel again, but this time felt different. She wasn't going out of confusion or curiosity. She was going to say what had been growing inside her, clearly, calmly, and kindly. Rachel greeted her with a warm smile and a hug. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel lighter," Emma admitted. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I wanted to share it with you." They sat on the couch, a soft lamp glowing in the corner. Rachel listened closely as Emma spoke. "When Jake first told me about you, I didn't know what to feel. I thought maybe he was drifting away from me, or maybe I was losing something. But instead, I found something. I found truth. I found parts of myself I hadn't looked at in years. And I found a connection with you that didn't take anything away from my marriage, gave me more to bring back into it." Rachel's expression was soft, peaceful. She didn't interrupt. "I'm not here to build a secret life or escape anything," Emma continued. "I'm here to say thank you. You helped me see love in a new way, wider, deeper. You helped me speak out loud the things I used to keep hidden. And for that, I'll always be grateful." Rachel reached for her hand. "You've grown so much. And the most beautiful part is that you've done it with love, not fear." Emma smiled. "I was afraid at first, but now I think I'm just proud. Of myself, of Jake, of how we stayed honest even when it felt impossible." The two women sat in silence, not needing to say more. There was no drama, no big endings, just respect and gratitude. When Emma got home, Jake was waiting in the kitchen. He looked up, his face full of quiet hope. "She's proud of us," Emma said, setting her keys down. "And so am I." Jake stepped closer. "Where do we go from here?" Emma looked into his eyes. "We keep growing together." Jake nodded. "I don't need anything else." They stood there, holding each other, feeling the kind of closeness that doesn't come from easy moments, but from walking through the hard ones with honesty. Over the next few weeks, life returned to a rhythm, but it was different now. Lighter, more open. Jake and Emma talked more, touched more, laughed more. They had gone through something most couples would avoid, and instead of breaking them, it built something stronger. Emma still met with Rachel now and then, but not to build a new relationship, just to connect, to talk, to continue learning. Rachel remained a friend, a kind mirror who had helped Emma see herself clearly. Emma started writing again, something she hadn't done since college. She filled pages with reflections on love, trust, growth, and fear. She didn't know if she'd ever share them, but writing helped her understand what she had lived through. She realized that infidelity didn't always begin with betrayal, it sometimes began with silence, with the fear of being truly known. But she and Jake had chosen not to be silent. They had chosen the harder road, truth, even when it hurt. and in doing so, they found a deeper kind of love. Not the kind that fades with time, but the kind that grows stronger through storms. Rachel never thought a simple weekend getaway would change everything. She was the steady one among her friends, responsible, cautious, always careful not to cross lines. When her best friend Emily invited her to stay at her family's lake house for the weekend, Rachel was excited to escape the busy city life of Chicago and spend some relaxed time before Emily moved away for a new job. She imagined peaceful days by the water, late-night talks, and catching up on old memories. Emily's family was warm and welcoming, and Rachel immediately felt at home. Emily's older brother, David, was around too. He was quiet but kind, tall with a calm confidence that made Rachel feel comfortable. David had been through a tough divorce, so Rachel didn't expect much between them beyond friendly smiles and polite conversation. But Emily had mentioned a surprise guest coming along, a woman named Claire, someone new in David's life. Rachel was curious, but unsure what to expect. The first night at the lake house was lively. The fire crackled and the sound of laughter filled the room. Rachel noticed Claire the moment she walked in. Claire had a gentle presence and a soft smile that made her seem both mysterious and approachable. When Claire whispered to Rachel that her intentions were harmless, Rachel was caught off guard. There was something about the way Claire's hand brushed lightly over Rachel's arm. It sent an unexpected thrill through her. At the same time, David's eyes met Rachel's from across the room with an intensity she hadn't noticed before. It was confusing and new. Lying awake that night, Rachel's thoughts raced. What was happening? She felt drawn to Claire's gentle touch and David's steady gaze, but she also knew this was forbidden territory. David was Emily's brother, and Claire was supposed to be just a friend, or at least that's what Rachel wanted to believe. The feeling was magnetic and confusing at once, pulling her into something she wasn't sure she was ready for. The weekend was only just beginning, and Rachel felt like she was stepping into a world where the rules were unclear. She wasn't sure if this was a test of her heart or a dangerous game. But one thing was certain: nothing would be the same after this weekend. The unexpected invitation had opened a door to emotions she had never faced before, and Rachel wasn't sure if she could walk away. By the second day at the lake house, the calm of the water and the peaceful trees no longer matched the storm inside Rachel. The quiet beauty of the place clashed with the confusing emotions building in her heart. What started as a weekend getaway with her best friend, Emily, had turned into something much deeper and far more complicated. Emily had gone into town for errands that morning. Leaving Rachel alone with Claire and David, Rachel found herself in the kitchen, pouring coffee when Claire walked in. She smiled in that soft, knowing way and leaned against the counter. Her presence somehow calming and unsettling at the same time. "You seem quiet," Claire said, stirring her tea. "I guess I'm just thinking," Rachel replied. She didn't want to say too much. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable last night." Rachel hesitated. "No, it's just... I didn't expect any of this." Claire reached out gently and touched Rachel's hand. "It's okay. Sometimes things just happen. They don't always have to make sense." Rachel pulled her hand back slowly, her mind spinning. It wasn't just Claire's touch or her words, it was the way David had looked at her the night before. It wasn't just one person or one moment. It was the whole situation. Later that day, David asked Rachel to help him carry firewood from the shed. They walked in silence at first, the air filled with early autumn chill. As they worked side by side, Rachel felt his quiet energy. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it felt like every word carried weight. "I'm glad you came," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. Rachel looked over at him. "I almost didn't. I know this weekend's been strange," he said carefully, "but I've enjoyed being around you." Rachel's heart skipped. His tone was gentle, but his meaning was clear. There was something between them, even if they hadn't spoken it aloud. As they walked back toward the house, Rachel felt the distance between them shrink, not physically, but emotionally. David's glance lingered just a little too long, and when their hands brushed accidentally, neither of them moved away. That night, the three of them sat by the fireplace. Emily had gone to bed early, tired from the day. Claire curled up on one end of the couch, her feet tucked under her, while Rachel sat near the fire, sipping wine. David sat across from her, watching the flames. The room was quiet except for the crackling fire. Claire broke the silence. Funny how weekends like this bring things out of people. David glanced at her, then at Rachel. Yeah, you learn a lot without saying much. Rachel's stomach twisted. She felt like she was caught between two people who both saw parts of her she wasn't ready to reveal. Claire's openness. David's quiet presence, it was overwhelming. I think I'll head to bed, Claire said, standing slowly. Good night. As she passed Rachel, she rested a hand lightly on her shoulder and whispered, Don't be afraid to feel something. It doesn't have to be wrong. Rachel didn't answer. When she looked at David, he was watching her again with those eyes steady, warm and full of something she didn't know how to name. I didn't plan this, he said after a moment. I didn't either, she whispered. They didn't touch. They didn't speak again. But something shifted between them in that silence. It was the kind of moment that changes everything, even if nothing is said out loud. Rachel went to bed that night not knowing what would come next, but certain that nothing would be the same again. On the third day, Rachel woke up with a strange feeling in her chest, the kind that sits quietly but doesn't go away. The lake house was still and calm, the morning fog floating above the water like a dream she hadn't quite shaken off. She stared at the ceiling for a while before finally getting up. Her thoughts were too full. She wasn't used to this kind of emotional mess, especially not with people so close to her world. Claire was already in the kitchen, humming softly, brewing coffee like nothing had happened. Rachel walked in, her heart thudding a little faster, unsure how to act. Claire turned and smiled. Sleep okay? She asked. Rachel nodded. Yeah, I guess. Claire handed her a mug, their fingers brushing again just briefly. Rachel pretended not to notice, but the warmth from the touch lingered. Claire's tone changed slightly, more thoughtful now. You've been quiet, she said. You're thinking a lot. I can see it. Rachel looked down. She didn't want to admit how confused she was about David, about Claire, about herself. None of this was expected. This weekend was supposed to be simple. A goodbye trip with her best friend before things changed. But now everything felt tangled. I don't know what I'm feeling, Rachel said honestly. Claire took a breath. You don't have to decide anything. Just be honest with yourself. That afternoon, Emily suggested they all go kayaking, and Rachel was relieved. Maybe the open water would help clear her head. Out on the lake, the air was crisp, and the sunlight made the surface sparkle. David ended up paddling beside her, while Claire and Emily drifted a little farther out. I meant what I said yesterday, David told her quietly, about being glad you're here. Rachel turned to look at him. There was something different in his voice, gentler, more real. I didn't expect this, she said. Neither did I, he replied. But I've felt something for a while now. Rachel swallowed hard. Claire, she's been kind, but I don't understand where I stand with either of you. David sighed. Claire and I aren't together. Not like that. We've been friends close, but it's complicated. She's good at seeing people, knowing what they need. But that doesn't mean there's a future there. With you, it's different. Rachel didn't say anything right away. The kayak rocked gently, the water lapping at the sides. She looked over at Claire in the distance. She was laughing at something Emily said, her voice carrying across the water. That night, things felt quieter between all of them. Emily went to bed early again, worn out from the day. Claire sat by the fire reading a book, and David was fixing something outside. Rachel stepped out to get some air and found David on the porch, watching the sky. You okay? He asked. I don't know, she answered honestly. I feel like I'm in the middle of something I didn't ask for. David looked at her, and for once the silence between them felt safe. You're not in the middle, he said. You're just feeling something real. That's not a bad thing. Rachel hesitated. But what happens now? David didn't move closer. He just looked at her with steady eyes. Nothing has to happen unless you want it to. But I'm here if you do. Rachel went back inside, unsure whether her heart was calmer or more confused. Claire looked up from her book as she walked in. Everything okay? She asked gently. Rachel nodded. I think so. Claire gave a small smile. Sometimes we can care about more than one person. It's not wrong. It just means your heart is awake. Rachel lay in bed that night, hearing those words again. Your heart is awake. It was a strange comfort because in a way she had felt asleep for a long time before this weekend. And now everything felt sharp, vivid, alive. She didn't have answers, but she was starting to understand the questions. By the final morning at the lake house, everything felt different, yet no one had said much. The air was cool, the trees quiet, and the sky was soft with the early light. Rachel stood on the deck with a blanket around her shoulders, holding a warm mug of coffee. The lake stretched out calm and wide, but inside her, the emotions were far from still. Claire joined her quietly, a calm presence as always. She stood beside Rachel, not saying anything at first. After a while, she glanced sideways and asked, "Did you sleep at all?" Rachel smiled faintly. "Not really," Claire nodded. "It's hard when your mind won't rest." Rachel sipped her coffee. "This whole weekend. It's been a lot." Claire didn't disagree. "But I don't think it was a mistake." Rachel turned to her. "You knew this would happen?" Claire met her eyes gently. "I didn't plan anything, but I felt something in you. Something stirring. Sometimes people meet at just the right time when their hearts are open." Before Rachel could reply, the door opened and David stepped outside. He looked at both of them and gave a quiet smile, one that said he also knew things had changed. He joined them on the deck without saying a word. For a few long minutes, the three of them stood in silence watching the lake. It wasn't awkward, it was peaceful, even though emotions swirled beneath the surface. After breakfast, they started packing. Emily was cheerful, talking about her move and her new apartment. Rachel smiled and laughed when needed, but inside she was pulled in different directions. She kept thinking about the moments she had shared with Claire, the long looks from David, and the way both had opened up something in her she didn't know existed. As they loaded the car, Claire pulled Rachel aside. "I want you to know something," she said, her tone softer than usual. "No matter what you decide, I'm glad we met. And I'm glad you felt something. That's a rare gift." Rachel's eyes stung a little, but she nodded. "I don't know what I'm going to do." "You don't have to know," Claire said. "Just don't ignore what you felt." Later, as they all hugged goodbye, David took a little longer. When he hugged Rachel, he held her gently and whispered, "If you ever want to talk or anything else, I'm here." On the drive back to Chicago, Rachel stared out the window, the trees passing in a blur. Emily talked now and then, filling the quiet, but Rachel barely responded. She was lost in thought. This weekend had opened a part of her she hadn't explored before, emotionally, spiritually, even romantically. She had felt seen in a new way. Desired, yes, but more than that, understood. The situation was messy. Nothing was clear. But for the first time in a long time, Rachel didn't feel stuck. She felt something alive in her chest, even if it hurt. She knew that whatever she chose, whether to reach out to David, to explore what she had felt with Claire, or to step back and give herself space, she had changed. And that change wasn't going away. Back in her apartment, the city noises replaced the soft lake sounds. But Rachel stood at her window that night and didn't feel as alone. She had been drawn into something unexpected, something that felt forbidden, but also honest. Not every connection fits the rules we expect. Some people come into our lives to show us who we are, even if they don't stay forever. Rachel didn't need to choose a path yet, but she knew now she wanted more than she had been living with. More feeling, more truth, more life. And maybe, just maybe, that weekend had been the beginning, not the end.